Dear learners, welcome to the Bachelor course on Human Rights. Before a seed gets converted into seedling, a lot of action has already taken place which skips our eyes. It takes a little extra effort to get to know about the factors that led that seed to grow above the ground. Similarly, in order to understand the internationally set standards of human rights, it is very important to know what were the historical and philosophical factors which brought the idea of human rights to where it is today. Well, this lecture is dedicated to this sort of question only. Let us look at several historical and philosophical aspects of the development of the concept of human rights. Rights are essentially moral in nature, and human rights are no exception. In any society, the first and the foremost source of morality are religious texts and discourses. Being based on morality and righteousness, religious ideas introduce an individual to the philosophy of human rights. Studying religious approaches related to human rights also provides a yardstick to measure the relevance of approach towards human rights imbued in the ancient religions. For example, while studying religious approaches to human rights, one could observe that all the religions manifested concern for good governance and rights of the poor and the oppressed. In other words, they stood for political, economic, social and cultural kind of human rights, which are popularly known as first and second generation human rights by the modern world. Let us have an overview of different religions and how they propagated the ideas of human rights. Hinduism, the ancient of all religions in the world, originated in South Asia, particularly in ancient India, which included almost whole of South Asia at that time. The meaning of human rights as per Hinduism has been more wide in scope as compared to the present day meaning of human rights in two ways. Firstly, the word adhikara in Hinduism includes the concept of duties pertaining to individuals by way of dharma, and secondly, it assigns some inalienable rights to all the living beings, including plants, animals, and thus included the environmental rights as well. Both the aspects are related to the modern day thought on human rights as well, thus proving the human rights approach of Hinduism relevant and applicable even today. In addition to this, in Hinduism, the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam was propounded on the belief that there is universality of human soul and belief that the whole world is one family with common concerns. Such ideas are revisited by the modern society under the slogans of globalization. Further, principles like ahimsa and Rajadharma in Hinduism restricted the governance and promoted political rights along with good governance. Non-injury, charity, concern for the hungry and the homeless were some of the human rights concerns touched by Hinduism, which are still concerns of the modern day. Another religion, Confucianism, was founded by a scholar named Confucius in 500 BC to 479 BC in China, who began to be known as Confucius later. He stressed on duties of man towards others and also emphasized the interdependence of the ruler and the ruled. Mencius and other followers of Confucius further contributed to Confucianism and added the distinction and recognition of individual rights to the Confucian approach of human rights. This religion favored ethical life and harmony and gave utmost importance to human relationships. Later, new religions like Buddhism and Jainism emerged and brought focus on equality of castes and gender, which was a kind of criticism offered to some of the practices under Hinduism. Buddhism stressed on non-discrimination, equality, freedom of religion, tolerance and learning. The Buddhist writing Panchashila could be looked upon as one of the earliest pronounced texts on human rights. In addition to Hinduism, Buddhism and Confucianism, another religion which found birth in South Asia is Jainism. The name of this religion originated from the word Jina, which means self-control. Hence, Samayana or control over one's senses is one of the principles of this religion. Jainism preaches Maitri, that is friendliness, Karuna, that is compassion, Mudita or Pramoda, which is sympathetic joy, and Madhyastha Bhava, which is impartiality. Jainism has great concern for all living beings, as Mahavira said, kill no creature. Clearly, Jainism stood not only for human rights, but also rights of all living beings. The religion of Islam also has deep roots in South Asian region. This religion is 1500 years old in origin and teaches tolerance and compassion for the poor. Prophet Muhammad has also advocated human rights through non-discrimination, and the holy book of Quran, which speaks for religious tolerance as all men are brothers and the non-Muslims should be treated with no less dignity and respect for their personality than a Muslim. Sikhism is a young religion of Indian origin. Sikhism was founded by Guru Nanak Dev around more than 500 years ago. He preached equality in general and specifically between genders, and also spoke for non-discrimination on the basis of caste. The last of the 10 Gurus of Sikhs, Shri Guru Gobind Singh, waged a war against oppressive rule of the Mughals and hence was the protector of political rights of his society. After the 10th Guru, the holy book of the Sikhs, Guru Granth Sahib, was accepted as the Guru. The holy book of the Sikhs, Shri Guru Granth Sahib, also speaks of a variety of human rights. Sikhism also had certain religious practices to promote economic, social and cultural rights. For example, the Pangat system of dining together while sitting on floor in Gurudwaras or Sikh temples, where people belonging to different castes and status sit together and eat food cooked in community kitchen. This tradition is still followed by the believers of the religion. Also, there was a practice of daswand or giving 10% of one's earnings to charity as a principle of this religion, which attempts to promote social welfare as well as compassion. Let us have a look at another fascinating religion, Judaism. The religion is based on the 10 commandments of Moses. It establishes faith in all religions and people, as the religion teaches infinite worth of every person and the sanctity of every individual life. It is observed that human dignity, the first crucial notion of human rights, is very well supported by Judaic tradition. The religion of Christianity is known for its principles of equality and freedom. It preaches political, social and economic freedom in the most vehement manner. According to the Bible, humans are created in God's image. Everyone bears what Christian teaching calls imago Dei or image of God, and therefore, for this reason, every human is valuable and above anything else. This is how this religion attaches the importance to an individual's rights. With the passage of time, these religious ideas were endorsed by the political philosophers and therefore led to the foundations of political discourses in earlier times. As Carl Schmitt notably mentions in his work The Concept of the Political, every religious, moral, economic, ethical or other antithesis transforms into political one if it is sufficiently strong to group human beings effectively. Similarly, in case of human rights, there is a rich political thought hinting upon the human rights related needs of the society and its principles. It was the convincing spirit of these rights that got further reformed in political ideas. I am now going to discuss some of the political ideas on human rights ahead in the lecture. In addition to the religious discourses and texts, another source of evolution of the concept of human rights in any society is the political ideas given by different thinkers at different periods of time with respect to their immediate social, political and economic conditions. So, for your convenience, learners, I have tried to discuss some of these political ideas under the categories of the Greek, the Roman, the Indian political thought to highlight the impact of different religions on these different political ideas and also to facilitate a little bit of comparison. Let us have a look at Greek political thought and human rights. George Lobo describes the Greeks, particularly Aristotle, developed a notion of natural law according to which each being had its own inherent value. According to C.L. Weper, more than anything else, he says, the Greeks were great humanists since man or human being is the center of all their thoughts. The Greeks eulogized, praised human reason so much that once a scholar named Pindar wrote, "One is the race of gods and men." Lycophron, another Greek sophist scholar, said that state is the guarantor of men's rights. Glaucon, another Greek thinker, wrote that men share a common view to abstain from injustice. Socrates, another very popular Greek thinker, spoke against the state system, which is one of the most important political rights of the modern times. His ideas were articulated by his student and scholar Plato, who also keeps individual in the center of his political thought and speaks for a just society where every individual gets justice. Aristotle, a student of Plato and known as the father of political science, believed that it is right of every individual to grow intellectually and morally, and it is duty of the state to ensure that the people are provided an environment of liberty, equality and security to grow. Let us have a look at the Roman political thought and its ideas on human rights. The Roman thought is equally important as the Greek one. As the Romans gave more importance to practical aspects of law and while doing so, they laid foundations for human rights law. George Lobo argues that the greatest contribution of the Romans was the development of civil law, not only the particular laws of each nation, but also jus gentium or common law of all humans, commune osmium hominium jus, as Gycas phrased it. Another Roman political thinker, Cicero, explained that nature unites man with man and joins them in founds of speech and common life. Another thinker, Marcus Aurelius, paved the way for the idea of civil political rights as human rights. In his writing De Republica, Cicero writes, "A res publica or a public concern is a res populi or concern of the people, which means that whatever is related to the public affairs is very much concern of the public." He also stressed that the purpose of the state is common good of the people. In Middle Ages of history also, we saw some of the very important developments regarding the definition and meaning of law, which hinted upon human rights awareness of that age. Saint Augustine, a scholar of this time period, in his work The City of God, laid the foundations for solidarity rights, now understood as the third generation human rights. Another medieval thinker, Saint Thomas Aquinas, gave fourfold classification of law and said that the test of all categories of law is based on human reason. This concept was further developed by Saint Aquinas in his prestigious work, the Summa Theologica. So, dear students, I hope you are getting the idea that the ideas of human rights were scattered throughout the ancient as well as medieval thought, whether religious or political. These somewhat vague ideas on human rights of the ancient and medieval times were further polished in the modern times by the scholars that we are going to discuss further in this lecture. Let us have a look at the modern Western political thought and human rights discourse. The modern thinkers could not escape expressing age-old consciousness of human rights and rather made remarkable contributions to the development of the concept. For example, John Locke. In late 17th century, he gave the idea of natural rights, which were reflected in both the American Declaration of Independence of 1776 and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen in 1789. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in his writing The Social Contract, contributed greatly to the basics of modern human rights by establishing the principles of popular sovereignty by his concept of the general will, which meant that the ultimate power rested with the people. Montesquieu, another scholar, adopted the ideas of Polybius and Cicero of the Roman period and developed the theory of separation of powers. The purpose of classifying the organs of the government, that is the legislative, executive and judiciary, and assigning each organ a task. It was to break away with the tyrannical rule of the monarchs. The understanding of genesis of political thought on human rights would be incomplete without referring to the Indian political thought on human rights. Let us have a look at the Indian political thought and human rights. I have discussed in the overview of the Hindu religion that there were a large number of human rights concerns articulated by the texts of this religion in India. it had its clear impact on the political ideas too. Herein it is noticeable that unlike the idealism of the ancient Greek thought, the Indian political thought of the same period was much more practical and detailed. Let us have a look at the ancient Indian political thought and human rights. Kautilya, one of the prominent ancient Indian thinkers, promoted Swarajya, which meant self-rule. Hence, he hinted upon the rights of self-determination. Kautilya, who wrote the book The Arthashastra, he strongly suggested the king to respect democratic practices in his governance and also to ensure welfare of the people. Kautilya was also in favor of abolishing the practice of dasatva, meaning slavery. In addition to the ancient Indian thinkers, the modern Indian thinkers have also contributed significantly to the concept and values of human rights. Let us have an overview of the modern Indian political thought and its human rights content. The modern Indian thinkers also wrote a lot for the rights of the human beings and with much conviction. It was mainly due to the subjugation of India to the foreign rule that the scholars and leaders raised human rights issues very forcefully. Rabindranath Tagore is considered as the prophet of rights in India. In his book The Gitanjali, he speaks for economic, social and civil and political rights when he says, "Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before the insolent might." He shared his spiritual approach to freedom with Aurobindo and Vivekananda. He dreamt of political freedom for Indian and the whole Asia. His poetry and literature spoke loudly of human rights values. Who can ignore the words of his poem, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high"? I believe if you all read this poem, you will find a treasure of universal human rights philosophy in just a few lines. Another great personality from India, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, needs special mention here. Gandhiji is world renowned for his promotion of the principle of ahimsa or non-violence, which is based on truth and fearlessness, abhyam which is called. He made the Indian masses aware of their political rights, including right to resist while following non-violence as means. He not only promoted right to self-determination and self-rule as political rights, but also promoted economic, social and cultural rights of the masses with ideas like Swadeshi, Swaraj, non-violence, Satyagraha, etc. The contribution of Swami Dayanand Saraswati is also of great importance as a nationalist. As a reaction to the British rule, he propagated democracy and decentralization of governance. Dadabhai Naoroji was another eminent Indian thinker who spoke against the economic exploitation and asked for the rights of the Indians. He gave the ideas of economic nationalism to India under the British rule. He was greatly concerned for poverty in India and held Britishers' drain theory primarily responsible for it. He also raised his voice against moral drain of the Indians, wherein he accused the Britishers of underemploying Indians, hence brought right to equality of opportunity in the spotlight. Mahadev Govinda Ranade raised the issue of individual freedom and said that political rights could not be separated from the social ones. The variety of political thought in India as well as outside India facilitated the growth of human rights as a concept. The political discussion and speculations in several pockets of the world then got transformed into the legal debates and the legal codes. From here, the codification of human rights values began, which was perhaps the most important phase, since from here the journey of human rights values to become human rights law essentially began. In order to discuss the journey of human rights from a philosophy or political idea to become an international human rights law has been discussed in lectures dedicated to international standards of human rights. I suggest all of you learners to listen to those lectures for an interesting discussion. For now, that is all. I hope you found this lecture to be useful as well as interesting. We will keep discussing other aspects of human rights in other lectures as well. Till then, take care. Thank you.